All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm here with I guess, a new group. I mean, it's always exciting to talk to some of the same people over and over again, as I often do in the show. But it's nice to have it in sort of a new configuration. I know a couple of you have been on the show before with different projects, but I think the best way to start this off is if one of you wants to take the lead here and sort of give a bit of background about what we're doing here today, and then what this new project is all about.
Sure. I'm Jay Hovland. I'm the singer and guitar player in this new group. The group is called Orelands. And maybe Scott and Dean can introduce themselves afterwards. But yeah, it's a musical project that came to be from an album that I was working on. And I had these songs and didn't really, I had some players in mind, but like I narrowed it down to the idea of like I wanted flim flon guys who Scott and Dean are, because I grew up in Flim Flon,
Okay,
and so did these guys. Actually, we all kind of grew up at the same time together in Flim Flon, and kind of wanted to make it, yeah, like a back to roots Flim Flon kind of thing. So yeah.
cool, cool. And I guess, yeah, Scott, if you want to introduce yourself next, we can go from there.
Yeah, I also grew up in Flin Flon with Jay. We were playing rock and roll up there. I've been on Witchpolice before with
You have.
Field the first time and Mahogany Frog the second time. This would be my third time.
And with different groups every time, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, different groups every time. Yeah.
Right on.
Dean?
Well, hey, I'm Dean Martin, and I grew up here in Flin Flon, Creighton, area as well. And we cut our teeth with our instruments and did a lot of exploring and you know, a lot of soundscapes, a lot of soundtracky nonsense and chaos for quite a few years before we all moved away into bigger, brighter cities. And it's kind of cool that it all kind of is brought it all back to the beginning.
Are all three of
Yeah.
you in the same city right now, or are you all in sort of different locations?
No, well, I'm in Winnipeg, and Scott,
I'm in
you,
Winnipeg. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Dean,
I'm back in Flin Flon.
Yeah.
representing for the 687.
688.
Oh, it's 688. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
688, 687. Yes.
Yeah.
So how does this work then? Is this like a remote sort of project, or are you guys all getting together, to make this happen in person and then
Well,
going back?
the way it started is I'd had the songs basically scripted out, written, and I took my little traveling studio and I went to Scott's first, and we set up in his basement in his little studio there. I recorded him playing to the songs that I had. That session went that we did like sessions with that, I think, Scott.
Yeah, it was kind of spread out a little bit. Yeah. Didn't take super long time, but it didn't happen really super fast either though.
No,
Yeah.
no. And then from there, I drove up to Flim Flon, which is like, about an 8 hour drive. So
Yeah.
I brought my little recording gear up to Flim Flon and asked Dean if he had a couple days to spare. So we spent two days, and Dean just like hammered it right out, super profesh. And yeah, so it's a distance kind of a project, but yeah, I think it turned out very well. Obviously, these guys are professionals, so yeah.
That helps, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I guess I do want to get into the content of the music and everything, but how
yeah.
does this distant thing? How does that work for potentially playing this live? Is that in the cards in the future, or is that something that's sort of to be determined at this point?
It'd be very cool. I mean, I think we'd all be down for it for sure. Uh, the yeah, I think we'd all be down for it. There,
The
there's
most
we'd have to hire another guitar player and another
Mm.
singer, I suppose, because there's some layers going on in it.
Right.
You can't get away from that when we're constructing these songs. So, but yeah, I think we're all down for that for sure. Maybe we'll just like get more flim flom people and become this kind of like, you know, one of those like robots that like can join, and yeah,
Yeah, like
Maybe
Voltron.
like
Yeah.
they're like Voltron, yeah.
Yeah. Flip,
most
flip.
likely we'd probably end up rehearsing up there, setting up in Dean's basement or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the most likely scenario for the three of us anyway.
Hmm.
Well, I don't have a much of a frame of reference for Flin Flon. I mean, I know where it is. I've never been there, but what is it like playing? What was it like playing music in Flin Flon when you were younger? Like, is there much of a music scene up there, or and especially for what you guys do is a little bit maybe off the beaten path, right? So where did that develop in a place like that?
Hmm. Well, I Flin Flon's a real rock and roll town. Like it's full of miners to begin with, and they're all like listening to rock and roll.
Right.
Like and there was lots of musicians, like lots of rock musicians up there, older than us. Like so we grew up with that kind of leather jacket rock music on the radio and
Mm-hmm.
in people's houses like quite a bit.
There was, yeah, like when we were coming up, there was actually quite an explosion of musicians of similar kind of mindset of like wanting to like branch off and experiment and find their kind of a voice within like a sonic landscape.
Okay.
Like you've got the guys from like Absent Sound who grew up there.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
others too, but yeah, and these fellows and uh, yeah, we cultivate like a lot of like free form kind of music ideas were cultivated there, and yeah, we took those like lessons that we all cultivated there, and nowadays, I mean, Dean would be best to speak about that, but I think there's like a very strong arts community and music community, probably more so than even when we were there. Actually, I would think at this point, right? Hmm.
Yeah, when we were growing up in the 80s and early 90s, I mean, we were looking at like metal and alternative music.
Yeah.
But there was like kind of a small group of us. I mean, there was this classic rock and roll thing that was happening in the background. And Flin Flon in general is very isolated. There's not a lot of things to do. And a lot of people that were living here and working in the mines, they had a lot of disposable income. They were, they liked to party and they liked to listen to good music and they would buy expensive guitars and drums and whatnot. And a lot of musicians would come and go. And I mean, because of that isolation, with no extra things to do, a lot of people would spend a lot of time on their instrument and get pretty proficient at it. And I was lucky at the time to meet, I think Jason at the time pointed me in a whole different direction of music at one point when his drummer of whatever band he was doing at the time had kind of bailed on him. Like I think the drummer was freaked out that they were going to play a show for the first time ever and worried what the community might think. And Jason calls me like a week in advance and goes, "Hey, can you learn all this like Pavement and Dinosaur Jr. and Jane's Addiction and all this crazy stuff?" And I'd never been exposed to it properly. And then, and Sonic Youth as well. And so when we started learning that stuff to perform it in like a week, it was a pretty intense process and it totally worked out. And it totally pushed us all in different musical directions in a pretty quick manner. Really
Mm-hmm.
opened myself up at least to, the dramatic world of sound that can be
Mm-hmm.
done.
Well, I remember it likewise too, because I mean, Dean it exposed me to other music too that I'd never really heard. Like, I think everyone was a little freakish there, and but in a very interesting way, and everyone had their own little path, their own little diversion from a similar kind of a route of like experimental alternative kind of music and that. And yeah, I think there was influence just being bandied about, you know,
Cool.
everyone had their own kind of path. Yeah.
Well, and then I guess with that in mind, I can ask the question everyone hates answering, but how do you define the sound of what this project is? And I know it's like a loaded question because everything has like 16 different subgenres connected to it now,
Totally.
but is there like a Cole's Notes quick way to define what it is you do with this project?
Uh,
I called it Dream Psych
Dream Psych, okay.
the other day because it kind of has like it is kind of like psych rock, but it is quite toned down from what you're getting. There's nothing super fast, there's nothing super heavy, but it is still sort of like a psych rock kind of
mhm.
vibe, I think. Yeah. Jay, what do you
Yeah,
think?
I think so. I think I was actually kind of trying to be, not trying to be, but just kind of steering myself to kind of like an emotional, like an emotionally honest place, you know?
Emo, yeah.
Well, well, I mean,
Flip on emo.
that has connotations. Oh darn it. Okay, I was trying to express feelings in a logical no. Yeah, and I was just trying to be emotionally honest, and I was trying to like yeah, I was trying not to hide behind too much artifice and too much like,
Mm.
you know, over the top kind of fancy obfuscation in lyrics and feelings and that, and at the same time trying to make a lush, you know, pop. There's a lot of, but I don't know.
It's a natural progression. If you listen back on Jay's records, going back like the 20 years of records that Jay's been recording, like it fits right in. Like
Right.
like if you go
Totally
back,
Jay.
yeah, it's total Jay. Yeah.
Does it feel
And
like
it's
sort of the
great.
next step in the evolution? I guess. I mean, you guys obviously have listened to probably all of his stuff going back that far.
I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely his songwriting is really strong. It's very unique, and I think it's a real great part of the Winnipeg like scene, because it doesn't quite, you know, it doesn't quite fit in kind of like really good ever, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
with like the
Yeah.
mainstream stuff. Like it's always like
It's just off
Absent
center,
Sound or
man.
whatever too, like, or
Yeah.
like Mahogany Frog too. They're always kind of you know, trying to find their own distinct road. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
That does make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always just tried to be honest in what I'm doing and try my best not to copy. You know what I mean? Just try to hold my own road, and because I mean, it just seems to me that's the point, right? Is
Yeah, yeah,
trying to be as connected to the source or connected to your experience and your way to translate what you do with your hands and your instruments and your instruments and stuff like that, so for better or ill, but like I mean it's just it's nice to have a feeling that you are seeing a progression,
yeah,
you know.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, with these songs, I mean, it sounds like you had them sort of the basic structure of them, and they were the lyrics and everything written, and then you sort of brought it to the other guys.
Yeah.
What was your vision of how these songs would turn out before you added the other players on it? Like, did the end result turn out the way you had sort of imagined the whole thing leading into this?
Yeah, well, yeah, it definitely did. It's such a weird thing though, because you start off with this. So obviously, you start off with like a little idea, and then that idea just blossoms and blossoms and blossoms. It grows branches, it grows
Yeah,
roots. It grows just different parts, and then and then sometimes you imagine it one way, and then you bring in people who are like professionals, as I say, people who are like you trust artistically, and just put it in their hands, and then it just becomes something a little different, but just yeah, it's almost like you expected it to be that way, but it's slightly different than what you thought it was going to be. And then we had a wonderful mixer named Grant who did a wonderful job mixing it, and that just kind of he took the pieces that I'd recorded, but he mixed it in a manner that I didn't really, some things I didn't see going that way, but it is that way now, and it's perfect. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Grant Triple's gonna make a lot of great records, I think,
Yeah.
Cool.
going forward. He's gotten really good. Yeah.
Well, I see his name appear on a lot of things lately too, so he's obviously busy.
Yeah. He's super busy. Yeah.
And I guess a similar, like a reverse of that question for the other two of you here is like, I mean, when you heard these songs, when you were presented these songs, did you have an idea of where the end result was going to be, or was this sort of the two of you adding your own sort of vibe to it? Like, I guess how much of it was predetermined on your end as far as what it was going to sound like coming into it sort of after the fact, if that makes any sense.
Well, there was a couple, like there was some bass lines
Okay,
written
okay.
for me. There was some that I changed up, and there's some where I changed, like added like, quite a bit different take on it, but it was mostly like spontaneous. I think it has like a nice spontaneous feel to it, because we didn't try to overthink too much of it. Like, like just let it kind of happen.
Yeah.
Like I didn't try, like obviously I practiced before we recorded and stuff, but I didn't like work through many different versions of it. I kind of was let the inspiration kind of like, or let the vibe kind of hit me, and then that was that. Yeah.
I
Cool.
kind of agree with that. I kind of took that vibe too. Like when Jason first sent me the demos, the 4 or 5 demos before the songs were kind of really together, and he was really unsure of like the direction of where it should go. I've been in a lot of serious bands in the past, living in Calgary for 20 years, and there was always a process of just like building the song and deconstructing it and building it back up piece by piece and just going through that process. I thought was just so monotonous. And I was so happy when Jay was just like, well, here's some material. And I decided to take a different approach with the drums going into Jay's project. I was like, I just want to make it really easy, simple, and just repetitive and just kind of not overthink it too much as well. Because I didn't know initially which direction, whatever drum ideas I painted over top of Jason's material, if he was readily going to accept that. And because the distance involved, there wasn't a like, hey, here's all these songs and let's work on them or let's try out all these different things. It was a very spontaneous evening where I sat down and I figured out the recording equipment and I just put the song on. I played it once, practiced to it once, second pass, recorded a drum take. And those were the drum ideas that I initially sent to Jason that when he finally came up to do the recording, year and a half later, we sat down with him and he's just like, no, those aren't the drums you were playing on those demos. Let's figure this out. And, played them back. And then we're like, oh yeah, we revisited these ideas and then just put it down. Tried to make it as
Oh
spontaneous.
yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, I forgot that actually. You were playing backwards drums, and I was like, no, no, no. And I took the tape and flipped it over this way, right?
It always works out.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
One, I guess it helps having the like familiarity with each other as musicians too, right? And then, like you said before, trusting you're dealing with professionals who know what they're doing and know how to sort of add to your original vision.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's still always a little bit of insecurity. I mean, there's a gross amount of insecurity that can come with that, right? Like, especially if it's these, hey, here's my ideas. You feel very vulnerable, right?
Sure.
And like even if you know people very well, and sometimes that could even make it worse in a way because you're like, well, what are these people that I respect? I'm going to read their expressions when I'm playing. You know what I mean? It puts you in a vulnerable position. So, you really gotta like, hold, puff your chest up and go, nah, fuck these. These things are,
It's cool.
these things are the way they're supposed to be. This is, so.
Yeah, right on.
I had
right on.
I had tons of insecurity with it initially. I was just like, oh, I'm like, oh, I gotta put down some really cool drums and send it to Jay, his Flin Flon project. Oh my God, I'm nervous. I got Scott from Mahogany Frog in this project. Ooh. But I just kind of like decided like just go for it. And I really like what turned out. I really fun, great ideas. And I like this dream pop, shoegazer kind of dreaminess. It's working for me.
Cool. Yeah, and I guess I don't like naming genres or anything, but that shoegaze aspect of it when I was listening to the songs that came through pretty strong too. So is that I guess like is there something that you all listen to? Are there artists that the three of you agree on that sort of not necessarily influenced this because of the way it was written and recorded, but do you have some sort of similar touchstones as far as music that you maybe listened to at one point or still listen to?
Yeah. What? On the count of three. Yeah. Well, I guess
That's a big question. Yeah, that's
It
a
is.
big
Yeah, it's hard.
question.
It's hard to answer. Yeah.
I don't listen, like we don't hang out and listen to records. Like
No one has time for that anymore, right?
no, like Jay came to see me playing for Cantor Dust. Like and that's like, like that's the like we will maybe see shows together, but like we don't like I don't know, like what would be something that we would all agree on that's relatively new, like that's come out like
Well, there may not be either, right? It's just yeah.
I have no idea because there's so much new like stuff coming through, like
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, ones that have been knocking my socks up recently, like John Cale's Fear album, really has blown me away in the last year or so.
I say you've told me about it. I haven't heard that one yet.
I see. There we go.
Yeah, shit.
Yeah. See, that's what I mean. There's similar
Yeah,
intersections of sensibilities, right?
yeah.
But and that's I kind of like that idea in a way too. We all come from different branches in some ways, but I guess it's a lot of the roots are entangled, right?
Sure.
Like, I mean, I love shoegazer for sure. I mean, I grew up with that style of music. Obviously, My Bloody Valentine, and that's always like the catch-all band to say. But yeah,
Cool.
Pavement. I mean, as Dean said, always love Pavement.
It's Pavement's great.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
And
know. I know it's a tricky question to answer too, but I mean, especially if you're not hanging it all the time, right? If I ask like a band of 18-year-olds who live together, it's going to be a very different response than what you have, and that has happened too. I've had like some punk band, and they're all listening to the exact same records because they're with each other 24/7. So I get it.
Yeah.
What is I know we already sort of touched on the idea of potentially playing shows with this. What is sort of the goal now that you have this done? Like, what are you planning to do with this record? Given that you're all in different cities and that the traditional way of promoting it and supporting it is not necessarily going to happen.
hmm it's a
Well,
very good question.
yeah. Well, we reached out to you.
Yeah,
To,
you
to
get a very
online
very small number of
because
people will hear it from this. Yeah.
yeah, and then we reached out to the We Hear Now label in Stratford, Ontario, to kind of make. I thought it would be good to try something like that, make that distance, make it cooler,
Yeah.
like instead of just kind of putting it out on something in Winnipeg and keeping it super hyper local, or kind of stretch it out a little bit more. We're just gonna, I don't know, that just let it be, I guess. Mostly online because we're not going to be able to play shows. Try to get some good reviews.
Yeah, and actually, there's a wonderful review that Joel, or a Bad Gardening wrote there. That when I was reading it, I was like, this is more poetic than the lyrics on the album. It was a very lovely piece that he wrote, But
Yeah, those reviews they're something. Yeah,
yeah,
they're
yeah.
interesting for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's hoping for just like buzz and word of mouth on it. Cause I mean, I do feel strongly in this, Sometimes you make some music, you make some art and you live with it for a bit and then your interest in it dissipates sort of
Sure.
fairly quickly, right? And this I really feel strongly about. I think it's a pretty solid piece of work. So yeah, it's going to be launched on next Saturday on the 21st, 2024.
So this will be
And
by the time this comes out, that'll already be available, right? So I mean, that's
yeah.
maybe a good segue into where can people find this? If someone wants to hear this record, they're hearing about it for the first time on this podcast. What's the best way to track it down? Or what will be the best right now at the time we're talking, right? It doesn't exist yet. But...
Yeah, well, just
no, you go.
I go. Okay, well, there's Orelands is the name of the band, so you can find it on Bandcamp. It's on the We Here and Now label. You can go there, and there's a bunch of great artists on that page as well. And you can find the album there as well. And there's going to be cassettes actually.
Oh, cool.
For this too. So I would say pre-order, but I think by the time this is out, you can probably just actually actively order them online from We Hear Now label.
Cool.
We Hear and Now. Yeah.
Yeah. We Hear and Now. Yeah.
We Hear and Now. Right on. So, and then has this, I know it's all very fresh and new, but do you feel like there'll be any follow-up to this? Like, do you feel, after having sort of heard the finished product here, is there a desire amongst you to make more of this kind of stuff?
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the way it like Grant like really put it together made it sound so just beautiful. Like, and we got it kind of finished. And I know like having it like just being like done, having this great like frame, I guess, for it, like having it like sound so good at the end with this great mix really makes it like exciting to think about doing it again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely not easy, right? Like the amount of recording that goes into it and that, but it's very worthwhile, But it's right, yeah. It's really nice, yeah, to give it to Grant, and then it's
a ton of work for Jay. It's a ton of work for Jay, though.
Yeah, right? It's a lot of work.
He's done a lot of work. The songs might be written for years, but like really, him recording all the vocals and guitars himself, like it's a large amount of art on his part.
Yeah, but you never think of it that way. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the sick brain of making music, right? You just do it. There's no question about it. You know what I mean? You put
Yeah, it
other things aside to just go.
just happens.
You've
Yeah,
been,
yeah.
you've been doing it for like almost 30 years now, right?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably couldn't stop if you wanted to. It just comes out, right?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Is there at this point any way for people to find out more information about the group? Do you have anything online that is, whether it's details of who you are and what you do, or social media or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, well, on the Bandcamp page, there'll be you can read a little bit up on that.
Yeah.
There's a connection to it, like to contact us, obviously, and then there's actually a video that was produced for one of the lead songs off the album.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is
Did you want
that
to speak to that? Oh, sorry.
is that already out, or is that something that's coming sort of?
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube done by local Patrick McClishan. He took it was kind of like we thought it'd be nice to we could have a video as kind of a promo, have it come out before the record comes out, so just share that around a bit. And Jay's like, oh, we should just do something with found footage or something. I'm like, oh, and then the Nuit Blanche, I saw Patrick had a video chaos pad.
Oh, cool.
At the Devil May Care brewery, and I'm like, oh shit, I'll ask Patrick if he just wants to run some shit through his new chaos pad toy, make us a nice video. Like, and he did, and it's really nice. There's like Flin Flon in the background and everything. It's really
right on.
Yeah,
Right on. Goes back to the Flin Flon roots. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure.